Hello, Bambaji here with a gate overview. Today we are looking at gate 13, as you can see here in the picture. This is the gate of the fellowship of man. It is the gate of the listener. And the 13th gate is in the G center. You might already know that the 8 gates of the G center, they make up 2 crosses. It is the only center that contains complete crosses, and it has 2 of them. It has the vessel of love, that's the first one. And we also have here the sun and the earth giving us 2 of the arms of what is called the cross of the Sphinx. So the vessel of love is obviously about love. It has that flavor to it. The Sphinx is the cross of direction. Now, because we're exploring the sun's transit here, we don't look at the design side of the chart, just the personality side, because we look at what is happening right now. And so the other 2 gates of the cross are not highlighted in this image, but you can see that the gates of the Sphinx, they begin each quarter of the wheel. Each gate gives us the flavor of the direction of that quarter. So in the diagram, you can see at about what sort of 10 o'clock-ish, we've got gate 13, which is this gate we're just moving into. And then absolutely opposite it, 180 degrees opposite, is gate 7. And then on the other sides there, we've got gate 2 is starting this quarter, which is down at the very bottom. And gate 1 starts the quarter of mutation, which is that top quarter there. So we have 4 roll gates that are in the G center. Gate 10 is the roll gate of the behavior of the self, and this is where we find the names of all of our profile lines. Gate 1 is the gate of self-expression. It's the individual role of guiding through being a creative expression. Gate 7 is the logical role of the self in interaction with the other, and it's future oriented because it's logical. And gate 13 is the abstract role of listening to the lessons of the past and taking in the other. So where the logic process demands a role for the self, the abstract demands that the self listens. Thus, we find gate 13 is the openness of the self in interaction. There are actually 4 other role gates. 2 of them are genetic and are to do with caring and bonding, and 2 are strategic, and they are about creating values and handling conflict. And all 4 of these are tribal, and they form the 2 channels of the defense circuit. So going from the sacral to the splenic side, and also sacral to the solar plexus side, that gives us that defense circuit. And those are the other 4 role gates that we have. So the 13th gate is called the gate of the listener, and the I Ching calls it the fellowship of man. And it's that roll gate of openness in our interaction with the other. And to illustrate how this works, we will look at first the first line of the 13th gate. And we always remember, we've looked at this as we've been going through these gates over the last few months, that the first line gives us the basic nature of any hexagram. So when we're looking to understand the hexagram, this is where we go to. And the first line of the 13th gate is called empathy. And knowing this gives us a clear idea of the role that this plays in the overall nature of the being. Through this journey around the wheel, I've mentioned the term genetic continuity once or twice, and when we're exploring the roll gates, understanding the genetic continuity that exists through all gates, and especially through the roll gates, can be really helpful in understanding the nature of our own personality and the way in which our purpose can be fulfilled through our profile. When we look at the position of the Sun, Earth, and we look at their lines, we're looking at 70% of our imprinting. And this is both sides of our design, the personality and the design side. So look at your own design. If you are a first line personality, say a 1-3 or a 5-1 perhaps, or a 4-1, 1-4, one of those, one of the things you can immediately understand about yourself through the genetic continuity to this roll gate is a recognition that you are basically empathic, because the first line carries an empathic quality. It makes sense, really, if you look at it, because the first line is about investigation and introspection. It's about building a solid foundation. And you can't do that unless you are open to information, unless you're open to the other. The process in the collective role gates is different from the individual process, which is about individual direction, about being the direction. The perspective that we have in the role of individuality is the perspective of being able to release the role in the now. That's the time frame of individuality. It's now, of just being able to get that creative process out. When you come to the collective roles, it's different. The logical collective role will project into the future, and the abstract role will always be looking backwards into the past. If you imagine these two are in the car, then the logic side is looking out the front window, looking to where we're going, whereas abstract is always looking in the rear view mirror to see where we've been. So it is here that the collective gets to establish where it has been, where it is going, which gives it a sense of continuity, and a sense of well-being. After all, everything that about how we stabilize our existence is in essence about the collective field. It's that hug around the outside of the body graph that is our security, it's our safety net. And in order to know about how to be secure and how to be safe, we need to know where we've been and we need to know where we're going, and these two come together and play together. When we study the nature of any abstract process, we come to understand that nothing is truly learned until the process is really over. It's one of the keys to being in the abstract process, to be in the experience, because unless we are totally absorbed in the experience, we do not accrue enough information for a proper reflection later. If we're not always looking in that rear view mirror, we are bound to miss certain things that have passed. So the 13th gate, the gate of the listener, but more important than that really is that it's a gate of secrets, because it collects the reflections of the past. This is one of the many gates within the body graph system that is specifically associated with memory. It listens, it takes things in. And it hears things that other people don't always hear. It has access to information that other people don't necessarily have access to. And because of the nature of the genetics of this 13th gate, they are in fact a very attractive force. All 13s experience that the other coming up to them and whispering their secrets, telling them, imploring them, and burdening them sometimes with their stories. And so all 13s end up collecting secrets. The fellowship of man is the way in which experiences can be expressed, locked into the memory system and investigated. Here in the collective abstract stream, in the channel of the prodigal, the design of the witness, the 13th gate in its listening, in its potential for empathy, and being open to the other, for taking things in, it ultimately has the potential to feed our ability to reflect. And this reflection then feeds our ability to be able to remember with relative accuracy. Why relative accuracy? Well, because this is the abstract circuit, and therefore it's a subjective process, which is not a negative thing. It represents unique, differentiated information, secrets that, when they've been reflected upon, can reveal something of great value to the collective, can be shared with the collective. All the role gates in the G center have a direct connection to the throat. Each and every one of these roles has a potential to express themselves, at least through articulation, and to be recognized for that. Because the channels between the G and the throat are all projected channels. The headline above the lines in the Rei Ching for the 13th gate, it reads, "Universal ideas and values in an ordered framework which inspires humanistic cooperation." Here we find the responsibility of the 13th gate. Its harmonic gate, the 33rd gate, the other end of the channel, is a gate of remembering. And also it's a gate of revelation. It is the articulating potential in the throat. But it is the fundamental role of the 13th gate to keep on taking in information from the other and being able to find a way to codify that information so that it can be used for the value of others. Universal ideas and values in an ordered framework. I mean, this is the whole process of collecting the past. You know, time is the continuity, or in the case of the passenger sitting in the back seat, you know, the distance is the continuity. And then we have inspires humanistic cooperation. This continuity and the collection of history, it inspires humanity in the sense that, unlike our mammalian cousins, we don't have to start over every generation. Human beings have this capacity to be able to store memory and then to be able to exchange it, to share it within the nature of the collective process. This sharing of history is indeed inspiring to humanity. It is a much faster process today, for example, than it was 100 years ago. Our collection system is faster, our dispersion system is faster, and the faster we get, the more advanced each generation is from the one before, because it gets to learn essential information that has been learned by the previous generation. And it gets to learn it right away, almost as soon as it comes into the world. You see very, very young children, tapping into the internet, getting that information. There's so much more so au fait with all of that than certainly my generation is. And we're not too bad. I remember my mother, she was, I was quite late in life, so she was much older than me, but she was never interested in learning about the internet when it came out. And so when it got to the point where it was the only way almost for her to keep in touch with her grandchildren and so on, so she had no idea how to use it. And it hadn't been in her experience at that young age. Whereas children today, well, I mean, they're pretty much in the womb, they're surrounded by the internet, aren't they? I mean, it's there all the time. So it's so much easier for that information to come in, that information that's been stored and collected and codified and reflected upon, it can come into the collective experience really early in the life now and inspire humanity as it does so. So the 13th gate, by its very nature, is dependent on taking in information shared by the other in order to benefit both itself and the other. There isn't another gate that has this quality. And so the openness here is so important to the totality. And because this is a roll gate, it's also important to be able to see its continuity in terms of its line value and its relationship to your own design, to understand the way in which you are open to the other. And in living out your strategy, in honoring your inner authority, to be able to discover that not only is that truly the way in which you're open to the other, but how much value that brings when you're operating correctly through this fellowship of man. So the grounding to the 13th gate is, of course, as we said, another G center gate and another roll gate. This is gate 7. It's called the army, and it is the gate of the role of the self. Gate 7 is the logical side of the collective circuit. It is part of the channel of the alpha. It is future oriented, pattern oriented, and it's about mastery through experimentation. In many ways, it's the complete opposite to gate 13. It is a mirror to gate 13 after all, and yet they are in the same overall circuit with the same main keynote of sharing. We need both. You know, they are the binary of their circuit, the yin and the yang of the overall circuit of knowing. And as we have traveled the wheel, we've seen how these mirror gates support each other and share so many qualities. And talking of sharing, I would love to share my screen with you again and show you, and back to this one, because what we have here with gate 13, oh, hold on a minute, I've got to pop up. Don't you just hate a pop-up? Okay, so gate 13. What we've got here, as you can see, it's gate 13 is right on the edge there of where this purple line goes down, which shows us that gate 13 is, and it's bringing us into a new quarter. And this here, this whole section here between the two purple lines is the quarter of initiation, which is subtitled Purpose Fulfilled Through Mind. This is a quarter which is dedicated to finding answers and to returning as a listener, as a witness in this lifetime in order to make sense of it. So you remember each quarter begins with a Sphinx gate. We have the 13, the 2, the 7, and the 1. I don't know if you can see my what's it? Hold on a minute. Let me see if I can do it with this. See, this is a new way of doing things. So we've got the 1 here. I'm not sure I like that. But anyway, we've got the 13, the 2, the 1, and the 7. These are the gates of the Sphinx. And these are the gates that we have in each quarter. So opening up each quarter, and I want to move you out of the way. There we go. Okay, so then also what we have in the middle is, okay, so we have here the 25, then we have the 15 here, and we have the 46 here. Tell I'm not an artist, can't you? And we have the 10 here. So those are the 4 gates of the vessel of love. And what they do is they mark the sort of the seasons for us in a way because of where they fall. So the 25 falls on or around the 21st of March usually, so that's our spring equinox, and the opposite to that, the 46, is the autumn equinox. That usually falls on or around September the 21st. And then we have the 10 and the 15, which are the solstices. Those are our midpoints where we have the shortest day and the longest day. So these are the gates in the middle of each quarter. And then at the end of each quarter, as we talked about in the 19, is we have one of the gates of the way. So we either have the 19, the way of approach. I'm going to remember them all now. The 19, we have the 24. So the 19, oh, and that's crap, isn't it? Okay, so we have the 19 before the 13. We have the 24, the way of approach, a way of return. We have the 33, the way of reflection, and we have the 44, the way of transmitting, or the way of alertness. So those are the gates that we have there. Okay, so the gates in this quarter, I want to show you here. Look, they take us on quite a journey. And what this journey tells us is that we have the witness. If we start at the top, this is gate 13, we have the witness that leads us to a revolution as we come up against our principles, trusting that the fates in gate 30 are going to be kind to us, allowing us to have the experiences that we are meant to have, where we can discover our spirit and our abundant nature. Through family and friends, we find a supportive community, although there can always be doubt in the pattern. This is the potential for social interaction if we're in the mood. And that may lead to crisis as we experience emotional vulnerability, which can then also lead to an appreciation of our own innocence. We may have all sorts of opinions about our lives, putting into practice those things that we have some control over in order to initiate ourselves into something new, maybe through shock. We might learn that every new experience brings a potential for growth, and we also learn that anything new can have great difficulty in the beginning. But as long as we care and nourish ourselves, we will be able to return to a place where we know all we need to know. And this is an empowering place to be. So this is the journey of the next quarter. And you can see that all except one of the solar plexus gates are in this quarter. There's no conflict here. This is found in the quarter of duality, but all of the others are here in the quarter of initiation. The emotions and the mind are sitting here together quite comfortably. This is the beauty of a mind that witnesses its own return through the emotional field, the healthy emotional field. And of course, you can look at these gates and you can find other keynotes and make up your own story for this quarter. This is just one interpretation of it. So here we are in gate 13, in the quarter of initiation. So lots of new stuff going on. And yeah, there have been quite a lot of planetary movements in this last week as well. So there's a lot to think about. There's a lot of energies moving through us right now on a global level, as well as what we're experiencing just within our own design and through other people's auras and through the general transit, the sort of almost smaller planetary transit field. There's a lot of global transitory stuff going on too. So we'll reference that as we go through this transit. And yeah, I think I will leave it there for now. Thank you very much for joining me as we explore a new gate. And I look forward to going through these lines of gate 13 with you. So I'll be back shortly with the first line, and I will see you then. And until then, as always, listen to yourself. Is it possible? Listen to what you're saying. Listen to what you share. I was having a conversation with someone because I was teaching the ABCs earlier on, and we're looking at circuitry and looking at the difference with sharing from an unconscious point of view. Unconscious as in not that you're not aware of yourself, well, kind of, but I mean it's an unconscious activation. It's a red activation in your chart. Sharing from that perspective as opposed to sharing from the conscious personality side of your chart. And that's something you could contemplate for yourself. Do you suddenly notice if you've got one of these throat gates and you've got it in the red, do you blurt? You know, are you suddenly just really like, oh, where did that come from? I didn't know I was going to say that. Or do you have more awareness around what it is you're talking about, what it is you're sharing? And you know, that can be something that's quite fun to sort of get to know about yourself. Anyway, I'm away, so I will be back shortly for the first line. And yeah, until then, very gently.